Hello and welcome to MIP TV, and still in his kitchen. It's
Never.
the hub
Yeah.
of, psychotherapy towers, Mr. Bob Cooke. How are you, Bob?
Hi. Yes, I've been delegated to the kitchen for this particular book review. So 36, the book review 36, the earlier one, and this particular one, number 37, is from my kitchen. But next week or the week after, I'll be back up into my studio.
Yeah, well, we'll have to draw the line if you want to film it from your bathroom, Bob.
Oh
But
yeah, oh definitely, Rory. That's beyond the pale.
that's beyond the pale. So this is a book we're talking off camera before we sort of roll the sound and the vision, and it's called Relational Centered Research for Psychotherapists. It's by Linda Finlay and the late Ken Evans,
Yeah.
both of whom you knew were friends of yours. And Linda Finlay, you told me, actually taught the research modules at some time at Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy.
Yes, yes. She was a dear friend of mine. She lives in New York now. Used to live in Scarborough, and we got her down, and she did the research module. And in our training at the Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy, anyone who graduates in the UKCP training has to do a 10,000 word research, qualitative research. And she came down because she's a wonderful expert. What she doesn't know about research, well, crikey. And she taught for many years and helped students writing their research project in qualitative research at MIP. And I haven't seen her for a while, but she's a wonderful person.
Let's start off with the term qualitative. There's lots of research methods, but generally, should I say, they
Yeah,
fall into two camps: quantitative, which is research that gives you statistics,
correct.
and qualitative, which gives you research based on people's phenomenological or lived experience.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
this book is about the latter, not the former. It's about qualitative research. And you also told me off camera that the UKCP are really interested, that's the kind of ethical body for psychotherapists, and they're really interested in qualitative research. Just for my own curiosity, why are they more interested in the experience than the statistics?
Well, if you look at the statistical side, of course, you're talking about random generalized trials, which is much more, I don't know if it's more scientific, more sophisticated, but doesn't lend itself to the phenomenological inquiry that we know in terms of relational centered psychotherapy. It doesn't really lend itself at all. And that's why, basically. And of course, if you're thinking of psychotherapy per se, and it's narrative based, the relational side to it, then we have a lived in experience in the room, if you like, beside paralleling the actual research project. So the UKCP, it doesn't abandon the idea of random generalized trials and statistics and quantitative research, but it really emphasizes the relational part of what we're talking about here. Hence the title of the book, which is, as you said, relational centered research for psychotherapists. So of course we're into a phenomenal relational inquiry when we're doing research.
Yeah, and I guess I'm sat here thinking now it's one of the things that maybe separates us from our colleagues in psychology, because
Mm,
psychologists
mm,
tend to go off statistics, where
mm.
psychotherapists tend to go off lived experience and their own
That's right.
phenomenological view. So this book, written by Linda Finley and Ken Evans,
Yeah.
what, how does it help those students who are going to be doing, or anybody doing a research project? What does it bring to the table, so to speak, Bob?
Well, no, I know you were a counsellor tutor for many years, and so I know you taught many students in the world of counselling and BACP. So before I answer that question, it's a question to you really. So the BACP, which is a regulating body for counsellors and
Yes.
psychotherapists, did they encourage, or was it part of their remit for accreditation that counsellors were taught a research module or
Yeah.
how to
Yes.
do research?
Yeah, and just to be clear, that the course I taught wasn't by the BACP. It was one of the many awarding bodies that
Okay.
are out in the world of educational qualifications. But yes, as part of that final qualification, so one can call oneself a counsellor. Part of that was a research module.
Yeah, I think both bodies would want students to do qualitative research because in some ways it's like the area of psychotherapy itself. It's practice. It's a narrative process. It's a relational process, and it's encouraging the student to dig deeper, to look into the lived-in world of, say, depression, for example, or addictions, or attachment issues, or ruptures in gambling, smoking, or whatever the person chooses to do the research into. It's encouraging the students to go deeply into certain areas of these different mental health issues, which, of course, in a way, we're doing all the time when we meet the people who come through our doors.
Yes, I mean, I think it's really interesting. There's a quote from a theorist that I have a lot of time for, Carl Rogers, and he said it's a whole chapter that's often misquoted. He said it's to my experience that I return to again and again in the process of becoming, and then there's a bit more to it, and then he says, but it needs to be checked in new and primary ways. And of course, what he was alluding to was the research. Was the phenomenological view, your lived experience may be one thing, but actually it's useful then to compare that maybe to other areas where people have had the same experience and see if their experience was the same.
That's right, Rory. And the other, of course, massive, and perhaps some would say the more important reason, is in 2017 we live in an age where CBT is very much the common, governmental therapy model, which is peddled, if you like. And it's mainly done that for two reasons. One, I believe economically. And secondly, of course, that it's got huge research behind it, which can back up through, again, often qualitative, and if you like, quantitative here. It can back up statistics and back up what it's saying. So, the government has got something to concretize, hold down, and say, well, this research says this, and this. And if we do this, and this, and this, then this and this will happen. So it's got a whole decades, if you like, of work to back this up. And a lot of the humanistic models, Carl Rogers onwards, if you like, transactional analysis, Gestalt, lacked research to back up their statements.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I could wax lyrical about Saul Rosenzweig, who talks about the dodo bird theory.
Oh yes.
And for those of you who don't know what that is, the dodo bird effect. It's a reference to Alice in Wonderland, and it was effectively the dodo bird was giving prizes out for a competition with the rest of the animals, and everybody must have prizes. And Rosenzweig's kind of thesis was that it was the relationship which was the biggest arbitrator of success within any model of therapy. And it was reproduced in some research by Lucy Goldsmith about 4 years ago, a PhD candidate at Manchester University. And she did the same, she did some research with people who were seeing psychiatrists. And it replicated Rosenzweig's thesis completely, that the lived experience was more important than actually the meta model that was being conducted.
Yeah, that's right. So it's very important for, I think, the humanistic psychotherapies to get their act on the road, to be able to back up these statements that they come out with.
Yes, yeah, and of course, to be fair to CBT, it was developed around a measuring a metric.
Yeah, now you're with me.
Yeah.
So it's measurable.
Yeah.
That's the bit. Those are the words that certainly the government would come out with when they're talking about a preferred method of therapy.
Yeah. So this book really focuses on how to construct research around phenomenological or lived experience.
That is the basis of this book, and very important for students and very important for seasoned therapists to be able to back up what they do professionally in a really considered research piece, really.
Absolutely. So the book is Relational Centered Research for Psychotherapists. It's by Linda Finley and Ken Evans. As always, we put a link in the bar below, so if you want to have a look at the book, inspect it, you can, and we put a picture at the end to give you some idea of what the book looks like. As always, Bob does this just for his love of literature. This isn't a paid placement or a product placement. It's just basically to share his love of literature. So Bob Cooke, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.